Is it unreasonable of me to withhold forgiveness from my wife after she kissed another man while struggling with postpartum depression? Postpartum depression? About a year ago, my wife's behavior took a sharp turn following the birth of our child. She became consistently irritable, suspicious, and paranoid, often accusing me of infidelity. I suspect her mother played a role in fueling these negative feelings toward me, as they frequently engaged in disparaging conversations about me behind my back. One day, she abruptly announced her intention to leave, and her mother began packing her things. Later that same night, she called me to confess that she had kissed another man, while simultaneously accusing me of betrayal. Unable to bear the weight of it any longer, I instructed her not to return. Despite her persistent attempts to reach out to me, I chose not to respond. After a couple of days, she showed up at our doorstep seeking assistance with her mental state. Recognizing the severity of her condition, I took her to the hospital, where she was diagnosed with postpartum depression and prescribed medication. As she gradually began to recover, I believed she could manage on her own. Consequently, I initiated divorce proceedings, a decision she vehemently opposes, attributing her actions to postpartum depression. While I sympathize with her struggles, I cannot overlook the act of infidelity. While I may have been willing to forgive other transgressions, cheating crosses a boundary that I refuse to tolerate. Am I being unjust in my stance? The interference from her mother only exacerbated the strain on our relationship. Such toxic meddling only served to worsen our situation, and I fear it may have contributed to her declining mental health. While postpartum depression typically presents with mood swings and sadness, her symptoms, paranoia, and delusions suggest a more severe condition, potentially postpartum psychosis. This underscores the complexity of our situation and the necessity for professional intervention. Reflecting on past experiences, I am reminded of the dangers posed by untreated mental health issues. I recall a colleague in mental health recounting a disturbing case where a woman, suffering from postpartum psychosis, exhibited alarming behavior, underscoring the seriousness of such conditions. Despite the challenges we face, I remain steadfast in my decision to pursue divorce. While I acknowledge the role postpartum depression played in her actions, I cannot overlook the breach of trust caused by infidelity. It is a painful but necessary step towards safeguarding my own well-being and that of our daughter. He did everything he could to support his wife with postpartum depression. However, she became inconsolable when she found out about the cheating and left, eventually taking her own life due to the toxicity of a neighbor. The audacity of the neighbor to ask to speak at the funeral was beyond belief. It was not just sad, it was truly tragic. Considering the possibility that his wife may have been easily manipulated, especially with her mother feeding her lies about him, divorcing her might be a hasty decision. While what she did was immature and hurtful, it might not qualify as cheating given her mental state and the influence of external factors. Perhaps seeking counseling together to address her depression and the issues in their marriage would be a more constructive approach before making any final decisions. Another situation involves a woman with postpartum depression questioning her actions towards her boyfriend's son. Despite being diagnosed with postpartum depression, she's unsure if it's influencing her behavior. She's been with her boyfriend for 6 years, and they have a 12-year-old son together. Since the birth of their daughter, there have been incidents where the son purposely scares the baby by yelling or making sudden movements, finding it amusing when she cries. Given her diagnosis of postpartum depression, it's crucial to consider its impact on her perceptions and actions. However, regardless of her mental state, addressing the behavior of her boyfriend's son towards the baby is necessary for the safety and well-being of the infant. It's essential to approach the situation with empathy and seek support to navigate through the challenges posed by postpartum depression while ensuring the safety of all involved. In navigating the complexities of a delicate situation, I found myself confronting a recurring challenge that posed a threat to the well-being of my beloved daughter. Despite my earnest efforts to address the issue, my boyfriend's son, Jake, persisted in a behavior that caused undue distress to my baby girl. The continuous instances of intentional frights, occurring multiple times throughout the day, left me feeling overwhelmed and deeply concerned for my child's welfare. Repeatedly, I pleaded with Jake to cease his actions, emphasizing the harm it inflicted upon my daughter. However, My appeals seemed to fall on deaf ears as Jake continued to engage in this unsettling behavior. What exacerbated the situation was the apparent indifference displayed by my boyfriend, who often dismissed my concerns as mere exaggerations or overreactions. Faced with the persistent disregard for my daughter's well-being, I felt compelled to take a decisive stand. I issued a firm ultimatum, making it unequivocally clear that any further instances of frightening my child would result in immediate eviction. This decision weighed heavily on my heart, as I grappled with the implications of such a drastic measure. Yet, as the situation persisted and my daughter's distress continued unabated, I realized that my foremost priority was to safeguard her from any further harm. The joy and innocence of childhood should never be marred by fear and anxiety, and I was determined to create a safe and nurturing environment for my daughter to thrive. Despite the challenges and inevitable conflicts that arose from my decision, I remained steadfast in my resolve. While I empathize with Jake's youthful indiscretions, I firmly believe that his actions must be met with accountability and consequences. It is my duty, as a parent and protector, to ensure that my daughter's well-being is prioritized above all else. Thus, with a heavy heart but unwavering determination, I took the necessary steps to initiate eviction proceedings, reaffirming my commitment to safeguarding my daughter's happiness and security. Though the road ahead may be fraught with challenges, I am steadfast in my belief that I have made the right decision for my child's sake. I ardently hope that she grasps the gravity of the situation and refrains from trivializing it. Jake's current amusement at inducing distress in infants raises concerning possibilities for the future. It's deeply troubling that he finds entertainment in causing fear in a baby and derives humor from her distress. Despite numerous admonitions, including the looming threat of eviction, his behavior persists unabated. It appears to serve as a power trip for him, targeting someone smaller with the sole intent of instilling fear. There's a possibility that he harbors envy towards the attention she garners. Nonetheless, he urgently requires intervention, and subjecting a 3-month-old to such repeated trauma is profoundly worrisome and could have enduring repercussions on her development. Shifting focus to the subsequent scenario, am I unjustified in permitting my children to defend themselves, even if it disrupts my brother's visit? My brother's stepchildren, aged 10 and 8, exhibit concerning behavior, yet he remains reluctant to address it due to his infatuation with their mother. Though their visits are infrequent, the recent one was marred by their disruptive conduct. My 11-year-old daughter and 10-year-old son opted to avoid interaction with them, prompting me to grant them permission to retreat to their rooms for solace. Nevertheless, my brother and his wife criticized my children for failing to exhibit hospitality. When my children attempted to engage with them, they faced aggression from my brother's stepchildren, who persisted despite being reprimanded. Dismissing my children's grievances, my brother insisted they resolve the matter independently. Exasperated, I drew attention to the martial arts trophies in my children's rooms and declared that they were entitled to defend themselves. Safeguarding my children's well-being takes precedence over appeasing my brother's visit, particularly when his stepchildren's behavior poses a threat to their safety. Although this decision may have disrupted the visit, ensuring my children's security is paramount, irrespective of any inconvenience it may have caused my brother's family. He immediately summoned his children and instructed them to behave, but their mother defended their actions, insisting they were simply having fun. I countered that my children's idea of fun might be a bit more robust than hers. After a brief period of compliance, they resumed their disruptive behavior, leading to a confrontation. Despite multiple warnings to play nicely, my children eventually retaliated, resulting in one of his kids receiving a black eye and being placed in an arm bar. As a result, my brother and his wife berated me for allegedly raising my children to be aggressive. Notably, each of his children, despite being younger, is larger than my daughter. Furthermore, they had been cautioned multiple times to behave appropriately. Consequently, a heated family argument ensued, with many individuals questioning the actions that prompted my children's response. My mother insists that I was wrong to encourage my children to defend themselves, a viewpoint I find utterly absurd. Instead of addressing the bullying behavior and holding my brother accountable, she prefers to condone it. I refuse to entrust my children's safety to individuals who defend such misconduct, and I am vocal about it. Some individuals prioritize short-term peace over confronting difficult issues, willingly ignoring problems that could have long-term consequences. It seems easier for my mother to turn a blind eye to the misbehavior of my brother's stepchildren and pressure others to do the same, rather than address the underlying parenting issues. This pattern suggests that my brother has a history of manipulating situations to his advantage, even at the expense of his relationship with our mother. While I have historically been more measured in my approach, my mother seems to expect me to maintain peace at all costs, even if it means siding with my brother's flawed perspective. However, I refuse to compromise my principles and integrity merely to placate him. Ultimately, I believe in teaching my children to stand up for themselves and not tolerate mistreatment from others, regardless of familial ties. Therefore, I do not consider myself to be in the wrong. I firmly believe in teaching children to stand up to bullies, regardless of their relationship with them. This early lesson can yield lifelong benefits. In my last story, I'm questioning whether I'm in the wrong for excluding my husband's children from my will. I'm a 52-year-old woman who married John, a 58-year-old man, 15 years ago. John had been widowed for about 3 years before we met, with 2 children from his previous marriage, Mark, 24, and Lisa, 22. I never had the chance to meet his first wife, and from what I understand, theirs was a happy family until tragedy struck, taking her life in an accident. John was understandably devastated, and it took almost a year for him to begin to recover from the loss. When I entered the picture, John was still deeply connected to his former in-laws, who provided him with emotional support during his grief. I had no issues with this arrangement and made it clear to John that I respected the relationships he had formed with his first wife's family. When I was introduced to his children, they made it clear from the start that I would never replace their mother, and they weren't particularly thrilled about my presence in their home. I accepted their feelings and agreed with John that we would take our relationship slowly to allow his children time to adjust. We decided that I would never try to assert myself as a stepmother and would only move in once they gave their approval. We eventually got married with their blessing, but this process took years of family and individual therapy to ensure that we were respecting their boundaries. As a result, while we lived together, I never took on a parental role with John's children. I attended their school events, helped with household chores, cooked for them, and maintained a cordial relationship, but I never disciplined them or imposed rules. They never came to me for permission or advice, and that was perfectly fine with me. This arrangement continued even after my own children, Kate, 13, and Laura, 11, came into the picture. Although I helped with their college expenses while they were growing up, I am no longer financially involved with them. Recently, John brought up his retirement plans during the holiday season, sparking discussions about our financial future. He toils in a high-stress profession, diligently amassing savings for an early retirement, slated to occur within the next couple of years. Recently, he informed his offspring of a decision to curtail their monthly stipend, redirecting those funds towards his own financial security. This news was met with palpable discontent. His children turned to me, suggesting that I, as a successful business owner, should assume responsibility for their financial support. I declined, elucidating that while my business flourishes, I am not affluent. Once he retires, I will be the sole provider, contending with expenses such as my daughter's college education and my own retirement fund. During the financial discussion, his children asserted that I bore a duty to sustain them. Their assertion bewildered me, as they had previously emphasized, including recently, that I occupied the role of their father's spouse, not their mother, thus absolving me of parental obligations. When his daughter referenced an expectation of inheriting my business due to her upbringing with it, I unequivocally declared that neither she nor her brother were entitled to any of my assets, particularly the business I painstakingly built before meeting their father. Their response was one of indignation, prompting their departure. While my husband was privy to these arrangements well in advance, he now harbors resentment towards the unfolding events. Following the altercation, he has been inundated with messages from his children and former in-laws, vilifying me as selfish. Even my daughters have expressed displeasure with me. Am I in the wrong? I believe not. They are not my biological children, and I bear no responsibility for their welfare. Their insistence on entitlement and lack of respect do not warrant any claim to my assets. If my business is to be inherited by anyone, it will be my own daughters. I stand firm in my decision. The perception that you are responsible for their well-being despite their previous assertions that you are not is unsettling. Even your daughters are affected by this dynamic, feeling a sense of kinship with their step-siblings. While you always believed that boundaries should be set by the children themselves, without overstepping, the current situation has led to everyone turning against you. It's natural for your daughters to have a different perspective, having experienced a sibling relationship with them, unlike yourself, who was repeatedly reminded of your outsider status. You shouldn't blame yourself for the entitled behavior of his children now. Whether you choose to acquiesce to their demands is a decision only you can make. It's disheartening to witness this rift, especially considering your efforts to maintain harmony within your blended family. You've always prided yourself on your handling of the situation and ensuring that the memory of your husband's previous wife remains intact in your household. Now, however, it feels as though everything is unraveling, leaving you confused and frustrated. At this moment, it's important to take a step back and assess the situation objectively. Your feelings of confusion and frustration are valid, but it's essential not to dwell on self-doubt. Consider seeking counsel from trusted individuals or professionals who can provide clarity and guidance during this challenging time.